Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Apologies for getting in on here late, but we're on for the business of the day. And today, like I said from the start of the hour, this conversation is about menstrual health day. And Victor talked about it with, like, what am I going to say? What am I? You are inclusive. It's an all-inclusive conversation, but I'm sure the guest is going to expand on that. But today is May 28th, and for millions of girls around the world, this date carries a very special significance. It's Menstrual Hygiene Day, like I say, a global movement of awareness, action, and advocacy dedicated to a subject that, you know, for far too long has been whispered about in corners, hidden in shame, and treated as something unspoken. You know, this year's global theme is Together for a Period-Friendly World. And that word together matters a lot because the truth is, this is not just a girl's problem. It's a community problem, a school problem, a government problem, and frankly, a national development program. Here in Nigeria, the numbers are staggering. Over 30 million girls lack access to basic menstrual hygiene products. Every single month, girls are missing 5 to 7 days of school, not because they are sick, not because they are unwilling, but simply because they are on their period and they have no pads, no private toilet, and no one they feel safe enough to talk to. Multiply that across a school year and you begin to understand why this is not a hygiene conversation alone. It's an education conversation as well. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. And we're not just talking about the problem, we're also talking to someone who decided to do something about it. Our guest today has been on the front line of this work, reaching into communities, sitting with young girls, and doing the difficult, dignified work of breaking silence and building knowledge. Please join us this morning in welcoming the founder of the Girls and Goals Initiative, Mary Alu, for joining us on this conversation. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us on the conversation.
Oh, glad to be here.
Hi, Mary. Good morning and welcome.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
All right. The questions we'll start off with would be two basic questions. First, why is it important that we have conversations about menstrual hygiene? And secondly, my co-host here was wondering why he had to be here. So let's talk about inclusivity also when it comes to having conversations centered around menstrual hygiene.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, it's important for us to realize that menstruation is a normal, natural, biological process.
Okay.
So it is something that a woman has no control over. It is something that she doesn't pause. She doesn't say, oh, this month I don't want to have my period because I don't have money to buy pads. It's normal, it's natural. And so when something that is a part of a woman's everyday life, you know, from your age of adolescence, that's from the menarche point to menopause, it begs to ask a question that it's something that we cannot control, then what is being done to make sure that it doesn't interfere with our everyday life or cause us not to be able to be productive in one way or the other. So it is important to talk about menstrual health because it's a public health issue. And it's also something that affects the productivity of a woman, of a girl. And if the productivity of a girl is hindered, it then means that the future is shaky, is on one leg. It is also important because it's an intersection issue. It interferes with health, education, economy, the workforce. So when something has become that intersectional, it's then important that if you don't tackle it, it begins to affect these other areas that I just mentioned. So it is very important. And in the area of inclusivity, women are not alien to men. They do not live in a world where they are alone. So, like I said, we're always going to intersect with men in one way or the other. We go to schools. There are schools for girls and boys. We get married, right? We have friendships. We have relationships. So it is important for you to know something that's crucial in the life of a woman so that you can know how to support her, so that you can know how to provide a good environment for her to live in and to make the world a period-friendly world. And it's funny because most of my friends have the same view that your co-interviewer has. They usually ask me, why do I have to be part of this conversation? But then again, when they have their wives and they have female children, most of them, it begins to click. And they now want to know more about it. They start asking me, oh, Mary, what can we know? How can we make it better for?
Do we have you on the line? Do we still have you on the line, Mary?
Network fluctuating over there.
Yeah, but at least you have your answer. Okay, please go on. You were talking about,
So,
yes, go on. We can hear you. You were,
yeah. So I said, it's funny because I said most of my friends have the same view that the co-interviewer has. And most likely when they get married and start having female children, they get excited and want to learn. So we don't have to wait for it to get to that point before we want to join into the conversation, because the world you build today is where your child is going to meet, and that is how she's going to live with it. So yeah, Victor, you have to get very, very involved in the conversation. It is important.
All right, I'm involved right now. Thank you, Mary.
Okay.
But let me ask this as well. Over the years, I mean, prior to this time, talking about menstruation, it's usually more like a secret conversation where they treat it like a sacred conversation. It's not brought out in the open. And still we have similar challenges here in 2026. Why do you think the conversation centered around menstruation is still being treated as a secret conversation in various communities, even in this year 2026?
Well, so there is the mental conditioning because, like you said, it's still treated as a secret. But then, in comparison to the Western world, you see that these conversations are brought into the light. Now, for something to be taken as a general conversation, for something to be taken as anybody can talk about, it has to have some form of national backing, right? It has to have some form of acceptability in terms of policies, in terms of governance, right? But till date, we do not have like a structure for menstrual health. We do not have a structure or like a policy until 2025 that there was a policy for menstrual hygiene. But then implementation is still low. We don't have people who in government and saying, oh, these things are important to talk about. So when they heard nobody talks about it, it starts becoming something that should be hushed. And we are Africans, right? We started growing up in homes where there's a article that was published by my organization called The Psychology of Menstruation. And it talks about the fact that growing up, how your menstruation started and how it was approached by your parents determine how you will see it. And we did a study that showed that many Africans, about 80% of African boys and girls in this case, we asked them a question: what was told you when you started your menstruation? And the consensus was that it was only their mom that had the conversation with them. And most likely when their fathers walk in on the conversation, their moms become silent.
Quiet.
So you see how that starts from the family.
Sure.
When my mom is telling me about menstruation and telling me, oh, this is what you should do, and my dad walks in and he's silent. And he's like, what are you having a conversation about? And my mom is like, nothing. This doesn't concern you. As a girl, I grew up to begin to see that, oh, men are not allowed in this space. Men should not know this. Men should not have this conversation. And that carries on. So if 80% of about 300 Africans we had the study with had the consensus that their fathers were not involved in the conversation, now you can begin to see why the conditioning is shame, silence, and, lack of proper education for menstrual health. So yeah, from the beginning, from the family, I always say before a problem becomes a national problem, it starts from the family, goes to the community, region, and then it becomes a national issue.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you, Mary. That's quite enlightening. Now, having seen the work you have done regarding period safety and hygiene, of course, I did see that you have a book called The Period Mantra. It means that you have identified a gap between what is and what should be. So tell us about that gap that you have found and how you and other well-meaning Nigerians have been able to close that gap, regarding menstruation in Nigeria.
Yeah, so it is said that knowledge is power, right? If knowledge is power, then why am I not taught about my body, my menstruation before my menarche? And menarche is the first period a girl has. It's called menarche. So it is important to note that before a girl approaches menarche, she should have adequate information about what happens. You agree with me that even some older women still don't understand everything about period. They don't know. I wrote the period mantra book, and I on the period mantra book I wrote from ages 8 to 18, and I have grown women who reach out to me and I need this book. I mean, I did not know that when the pain becomes severe, when I see all these symptoms, I have to go to the hospital because it's most likely not normal period pain. So we go through our reproductive life stumbling on any information we get. We don't have accurate information about our bodies. We don't have accurate information about what menstruation does to us, the hormone, emotional up and down. We do not have the proper psychosocial support. So we came to the consensus that, okay, we need to provide that knowledge. Let it be available for people who need it. And like we said, apart from parents teaching you about your period, the only line you're giving when you start your period as Nigerians, I'm very sure a lot of people can relate to this, is if a man touches you, you get pregnant.
Victor
That's
used it
about
this morning.
the whole comprehensive education we're giving when we start.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
That's absolutely, and let's not even begin to talk about the male who are not even told anything. They're not told anything. They stumble across puberty and adolescent age without any information. So we wanted to close that gap. And we also wanted to make sure that even if we cannot provide pads for everybody in the world or every schoolgirl, we wanted to make sure that emergency settings, in conflict settings, there are pads available. Because like I always say, periods don't pause during conflict.
Sure.
So that's why in our efforts, we make sure that we have pad banks installed in schools, so there won't be absenteeism from these girls. So when they get staying in school, they can easily access their facilities, change with the pads available there, and continue their class like normal. So those are the gaps we found, and those are some of the things we have done to fill those gaps.
All right. Let's talk about some field experiences. Yesterday, I was having a conversation with a friend, and just coincidentally, he did mention that his niece began to actually experience a menstruation cycle at the age of 10, and when she began to experience that, the mom was called from school that this is what is happening, and she said, well, now you can get pregnant, so be careful. That was the advice the mom gave to his niece, and this was many years ago anyways. But again, in your field experience, what are some of the misconceptions that young girls still have when it comes to menstruation, of course, and their menstrual cycle?
You would not believe some of the things I've heard, myths and misconceptions, and that's one of the chapters in the book Period Mantra. We tackled some of the myths, and from field work, I've heard a girl tell me that she's not allowed to touch food or cook food in the house because her period is impure. I've also heard a girl say periods are for girls who are loose. Yes, she started her period, and according to what she was told by the guardian with her, periods are for girls who are loose. It starts early because you're loose, or you're not, you're doing what you're not supposed to do. I've heard girls say that when they're on their period, there are certain things they should not cross. If there is something in their presence, they don't need to cross it, because if they cross it, it means that they've caused the thing. It's just it's a lot. I cannot begin to name some of them, and if you get some of them, you get very worried. And there are some girls who have said they can't dispose their sanitary pads, or they can't change their sanitary pad. There are some people who even practice free flow. They sit at a spot for the whole period because they believe that nobody should see them, nobody should experience what they shouldn't be in the presence of people. So yeah, those are misconceptions, and we deal mostly with displaced persons, and some of those misconceptions come heavily from there, and it's often linked to a culture most of the times. Yeah.
All right. We would have loved to keep up with this conversation, but our time is fast spent. But before you go, we just want you to speak to the way forward regarding policies and behavioral change.
Yeah, so like I said initially, menstrual health is a national issue. It shouldn't be treated as a one-off issue. It shouldn't be treated by just distributing pads one day or another. It's beyond access. It interrupts education. It interrupts workplace evolution. It interrupts the productivity of women. And when you say how important is this, I tell you that if a nation who is supposed to have two legs, one part of the leg is not properly tended to, one part of the leg does not have what they need to thrive, then does it mean that this country is standing on proper two legs? Or it means that we have one leg that is strong and the other leg that is wobbly. So for us to have a nation where both people are productive, both male and females, then everything that affects that productivity of a girl should be tended to. So we have African countries right now who has free pad policies, who have wash facilities. Kenya, in case it's almost like no African country is doing that. Kenya is doing that. They are the first African country to have free pad policies. We have Namibia, we have Uganda. So it's high time that Nigeria follows suit, to make sure that girls don't miss school, girls don't miss their economic contribution to the country. And we even have international countries like Scotland and India. India, that most people see as countries that hasn't evolved as much. They have a menstrual policy that tends to free pads for schoolgirls. So I think it's important for us to do that, and the infrastructure to make sure that wherever a woman is found, this biological or natural occurring process is not hindered, or she doesn't have to go through it without dignity.
All right. Thank you so much, Mary, for joining us on the conversation this morning. Definitely had an enlightening moment here on Rapid Dawn.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day.